Good evening from PLUGHITZ Studios in Largo, Florida. I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we are here with episode 551 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology for Sunday, February 23rd, 2020. This show is a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. This week, Apple's changing its defaults, GeForce Now is losing its content, and Google's following kids again. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, on any of our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Mixer, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, or a myriad of others, on the radio, or on our website, PLUGHITZlive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are now 3 ways that you can do that. First, you can join us live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern at f5live.tv/join us. There you can chat with us during the show and give your feedback on the topics as we talk about them. Second, you can listen on 88.1 WMLD radio in the New York area or through their website Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. Or you can always subscribe at PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, The Piltch Point, PLUGHITZ Live Presents, and more, and of course, see all the different ways that you can watch or listen. With that, Avram, how are you doing tonight?
All right, not too bad. Could be worse. Hey, I gotta ask the question that all of our viewers are going to ask. Is that a Stranger Things T-shirt?
It absolutely is. It is. Hawkins Middle School AV Club.
All right. I love it.
I've been watching this shirt on Amazon for a little while. I'll put a link in the show notes for people who want to get it. And it dropped $5 this week, and I'm like, all right, well, that was the push over the edge that I needed.
That's your cue. There was also some Stranger Things news this week, some about who's going to be in the 4th season, and 4th season supposedly coming this year. So that's good.
Yes,
that's good news.
I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
I saw an interview where Noah had said he had read the first 4 episodes or something, so that suggested that they weren't too far into production if he'd only read the script for the first 4 episodes. So
I don't know. It depends on how they do the production. Aren't there a lot of shows where they don't show it to you till right before because they don't want to spoil it? I mean, I don't know if Stranger Things is on the level of like Marvel level security, but I know in like a lot of the Star Wars and and Marvel movies, they don't even get to see the whole script. Most of the cast. So
another great
parts of it.
My favorite example of that was Cloverfield. They filmed the trailer that was shown on TV and in theaters before the cast knew what they were applying for. So the only part of the only part of the script they had seen was for what was in the trailer, which was like the first 4 minutes of the movie or whatever. Which is they weren't even allowed to know what they were auditioning for, which is special. Anyway, the first teaser for season 4 for Stranger Things is out, and it was super exciting. I mean, it was exactly what everybody thought. They weren't terribly secretive in the last 60 seconds of the last season.
Yeah.
But
no doubt about it. So I'm looking forward to that, and since we may not get to talk about it in our streaming talk tonight, I'm going to put in a good word for the show I've been binging today, which is on the HBO streaming services. It's called The Foreigners. It is a show. It is a Norwegian HBO show about set in Oslo, where where a whole bunch of different refugees from different time periods are just showing up, like, and they have all these problems, these like modern day refugee style problems, but they're like old Norse Vikings and people from the Stone Age and people from the 19th century, or they're all like sort of just like getting teleported into the present, and then there's like a murder mystery, who's murdering somebody, is it like whatever, and there's like anti-Viking prejudice and things like that. So
what an interesting,
it's an interesting show.
What an interesting like anti-take on Timeless. Because it's kind of like the opposite of Timeless, and yet still very similar in a wonderful way. What was the name of this?
Be Foreigners. Spelled like foreigners with BE in front of it.
Okay.
And it just came to HBO. It was airing on like HBO Europe in the fall, and then it just came to the streaming services in the US, to HBO streaming services and HBO on demand like this week. Okay. So that's how I heard about it.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
Well, lots
to binge.
To plug one of our CES interviews that just published this week, I just went into Minow and added it to my shows that I'm interested in on there. So if you have not seen our interview with Minow from CES this year, you can go to PLUGHITZlive.com/CES and see that interview and find out what that app is. It's really cool. It allows you to like mark what shows it is you want to follow, and then you can put in what streaming services you're subscribed to, and it'll let you know whether or not those shows are available, and if they're not, it'll notify you when they become available on the services you have. It's a really cool platform. And then you just click on the thing, you say, I want to watch this now, and it'll open the right streaming app for you on whatever platform you're on. So it's a little close. Cool. It's a little close to the thing we've talked about. It's not the pay for it in one thing. Universal... Right. But it's a single UI to show all the shows. So we're getting closer to the thing we want. And it's free, which is even better. Anyway, so yeah, that published this week. Check it out. And I just literally got to use it now. So wonderful. Anyway, since we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, let's get down to some news. This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a subscription to Office 365, $10 off on an Xbox One controller, a new laptop, tablet, an Xbox One S or X, the Xbox Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate, or many other things like VR headsets and games for your consoles and your PC. You can get all of them at the Microsoft Store. And if you're a current student or military, you get a discount on almost everything in the store. And you can find all of that by going to f5live.tv/Microsoft. Speaking of Microsoft, before we get started on our topic, I have been playing around with the Xbox console streaming to my Android device this week, and it's really cool, and we'll talk about why that idea might work better in our next segment. But for right now, one of the biggest complaints for sure that I've had, and I know a lot of people have, about iOS and the newly forked iPad OS has been the fact that default apps are not a choice. You get what you get, and you can use another browser, you can use another email client, but if you click a link to send an email from, say, Slack, it will open in the Apple email client whether you use it or not. If you open a link from Facebook to open in another browser, it will open in Safari, whether that's the browser you use or not. And that is kind of all part of what we've been talking about over the last couple of months, has been Apple's kind of monopoly ecosystem where they want to be in charge of everything. Well, according to a report this week, iOS 14 and therefore the forked iPad OS 14 could finally change that. You might actually be able to choose a default browser, a default email client, hopefully a default mapping client, because woof, and actually start using iOS as if it were any other operating system in existence. Hooray!
Well, this is one of many complaints that I've had about Apple kind of really being paternalistic and making decisions for you.
But always decisions in their own favor. Always decisions in their own favor.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Yeah.
Decision for you. Well, we think we know best. We think our browser is the best. Our email is the best. And we'll tell you what you're going to use. So it's a good and long overdue move. This is something that people have had on other platforms forever. I think it's been on. I mean, has it ever not been that way on Windows? I can't even remember a time when you didn't have control of that.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't know. Did they not have to do that on Windows 95? I don't remember. Maybe in Windows 95, maybe in your Netscape browser, when you clicked a link, it went to open it in the Netscape email or something, but you could change it in the browser. I mean, like, it's always been available for you to configure.
Yeah.
Even now, where Microsoft is doing everything it can to nag you to have, to use Edge, they can't stop you from. They don't stop you from using Chrome as your browser, as your default browser.
And that's such an interesting comment, because if we go back to the Windows 98 days, right? Windows 98 Second Edition started to build IE into the operating system. The File Explorer within Windows 98 SE was Internet Explorer. With an altered control bar, the toolbar at the top.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And even though you didn't have to use IE as your default browser, you could download and install anything else. They still had antitrust suits in 2 different continents, which they lost. Even though they did allow you to have a different browser, they still lost. How nobody has challenged Apple on this is beyond me. I think the exact same thing.
I think it's...
And more.
Here's... Actually, I think the reason is that what happened to Microsoft kind of proves that these cases don't really work. These cases don't really work out in favor of the consumer. So, to be honest, I'm old enough to have actually been in the workforce and an adult when the Microsoft lawsuit was happening, and Microsoft's a fine company, but I honestly thought at the time, like, this isn't really fair of them, because it is a competitive advantage. It is an extreme competitive advantage if you have a free piece of software built into the operating system that people are generally not going to go out of their way to install an alternative. Now, what's very interesting is they did such a poor job, their browser got such a poor reputation, and Google managed to make such a much better mousetrap that people installed Chrome anyway. But honestly, I'm still surprised that that happened, because if you have the default thing in the operating system, a lot of people just are not going to go out of their way to say they're not going to know about third party uh, options. They're not going to, um, want to be bothered if there's something that maybe is just a little bit better. So, it's amazing what Google has been able to do in getting the market share for Chrome, and I think a lot of it is just due to the prevalence of Google services. Like, okay, so this integrates really well with my Gmail and my search and other things that everybody's using on Google. So, and just that, like, Chrome was such a much better browser than Internet Explorer, and then Edge. Now, of course, it's interesting now that Edge is using Chromium as is using the same rendering engine as Chrome. There's, you could maybe do a more fair comparison or whatever, but so yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that people did actually move to the third-party browser. But what also happened is Microsoft didn't really get hurt by those lawsuits.
Right.
They had to pay some minimal fines. It didn't. They didn't have to unbundle IE from the OS.
Nope, but
they weren't broken up
in Europe. When you first, as part of the out-of-box experience, even though IE was pre-installed, it required that it ask you which browser you wanted, and if you wanted, at the time, it was Netscape. But as time went on, the choices changed, and Firefox and Chrome were replaced. Netscape as the choices. Obviously, that isn't quite the thing today, but it was for a while. I think it was required for like 8 years or something as part of the settlement in Europe.
It might have helped. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if anyone has studied whether that actually helped market share in Europe for Chrome browser when it was getting off the ground.
It sure didn't help Netscape.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I guess the point is, you're asking why hasn't anybody sued Apple for antitrust? Well, I think that people looked and saw that how little effect even winning over Microsoft had. So why are they going to make the effort?
Sure.
Why is the government going to make an effort to try and sue over this, when the best they could probably hope for is to slap Apple on the wrist? Certainly, I don't think too many of the FTC, too many of the administrations that have been around since then have really been that eager to engage in that kind of antitrust anyway. So yeah, I don't think this is, if we were really trying to be very literal about what is using your platform as a competitive advantage, this has to be considered very high on the list.
Sure. And the thing that's interesting is that it's such a wanted feature that at least two of the other companies, Microsoft and Google, have built the feature into their own iOS ecosystems. Like, if you use Outlook as your email client, which is a pretty popular thing to do on iPhone, you have the option to open links in your email in Edge on iPhone. You also have the ability to open address links in Google Maps, Waze, City, whatever I can't remember what the name of it is, City something, City Mapper. And Google has very similar things in their Gmail client, where it'll open in the Chrome browser on the phone, and Google Maps, and it's such a wanted thing that some of the app companies have built it into their own ecosystems since Apple won't. So I'm glad to see that Apple is potentially, because it's not confirmed, potentially building it into iOS 14, because I think it'll make a lot of people happier, because a lot of people use the Chrome browser on their iPhone a lot. Believe it or not, a lot of people use the Edge browser. Possibly more people use the Edge browser on their iPhone than on their computer, but that's a whole different thing. So, having that ability for them to work in a single user experience, I think will be a positive thing for iPhone and iPad users. Now, will it actually happen? We will find out later in the year when they talk about what's coming to iOS and iPad OS 14, but let's keep our fingers crossed. This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. If you're looking to obfuscate your internet browsing from your ISP, from Google, from Facebook, from a number of other companies, a VPN is a great way to do that. And right now, they've got PureVPN has got some pretty great deals with up to 70% off, which is essentially $3.33 a month if you do a 2-year plan, which is a really great deal. And in addition to hiding your browsing history, you also have the ability to report that you're somewhere else. So when you're out of the country or even out of state, if you want to watch content from a streaming service back where you live, you can still say you're there and it will continue to work. And if you want to find out about all of the features that they offer and get this great deal, you can go to pilchpoint.live/PureVPN. All right, Avram. What have you got for us this week?
So I wanted to talk about upgrading your PC. This week we put up a really helpful story from our new Tom's Hardware graphics editor, Jared Walton, who is an incredible expert on graphics cards. And his story is about finding out what graphics cards are compatible with your computer, because some people may be wondering, if I have a computer that's a desktop that's a little bit older, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, can I buy a new graphics card and put it in? And so I wanted to talk about that briefly, and then, not just your graphics card, but really, how do you know whether your computer is upgradable and whether it's worth your time and money to upgrade it? So the good news about graphics cards is that if you have almost any desktop that was made in the last 10 years or so, you probably have your motherboard almost certainly has PCIe slots on it, PCI Express slots. And if you have a PCIe X16 slot, like most of them would have, then you can probably use even today's most cutting-edge graphics cards. Now, there's several caveats with that. One is that, do you have enough horizontal space to put the graphics card in, or is it going to knock into something and be blocked? Two, do you have free PCIe X16 slot? Do you have enough power supply? Do you have a good enough power supply? Most modern day graphics cards require at least a power supply with at least an 8-pin, a special 8-pin connector, or an 8-pin and a 6, or an 8 plus 6-pin connector for the higher end stuff. That's like 2070, RTX 2070 and higher, or AMD RX 5700 and higher. Or if you are getting like the top of the line RTX 2080, you need a dual 8-pin power supply, and your power supply probably you'll want to be, if you're using a modern graphics card, at least 500 watts. But you could get away with maybe a 450, 350 if you're getting a really low-end graphics card like the GTX 1650. Now, the question though, forget even whether those model numbers I said to you make sense, is do you actually get a benefit from upgrading? And that's a question that you can ask globally, not just about your graphics card, but about upgrading your RAM, upgrading your CPU, upgrading your power supply, upgrading your storage. If your computer really is this old, a new component will stick out like a sore thumb. You're gonna get, some brand new wheels to put on, your old car. It's not going to go much faster, right? If your CPU is slow, a faster graphics card will help you play games, but the CPU is now going to be the bottleneck. So you really, before you make an upgrade to your system, any kind of major upgrade, you have to think, well, is the rest of my system going to now not work so well with this new component? Maybe it's compatible and it will run, but maybe it's not worth the money. Like if you've got an older CPU that's maybe more than 3-4 years old and you're wanting to buy the latest and greatest graphics card, you probably, depending on how good of a CPU it is, you probably shouldn't do that. If you want to upgrade your graphics at all, you should probably go for a low-end card because you don't want to put a lot of money into something that you're not going to get the performance out of. Or better yet, balance out your money and just spend and buy a new motherboard, CPU, and graphics card. So a lot of times when we're talking about upgrades, people say, I just want to upgrade this one component, and or they're buying a computer now with the hope that they're going to upgrade it later. But a lot of the time, once you change one thing, it kind of requires you to change a bunch of other things. Like, for example, let's say you have a computer that was taking, older RAM, like DDR3 RAM, and now you're on DDR4, and now you want to buy new RAM. Oh, but now you have to upgrade the motherboard to support the new RAM, and oh, your CPU doesn't fit in a new motherboard, so you need a new CPU. So I guess what I'm saying is, you really have to look when you're upgrading, is this something that is a discrete upgrade where I can just get some extra bang for my buck out of it, or is it going to be the beginning of a new computer? The one thing that you can almost always upgrade with some confidence is your storage. If you want to, most computers in the last 10 years have SATA for their connecting to a hard drive or an SSD. So you can get a SATA SSD, a 2.5-inch SATA SSD, put it in there, and you can get good performance, particularly if you're upgrading over a hard drive. What you can't do, of course, is, unless your motherboard is new enough to support it, get the fastest SSDs, which are now all M2 NVMe type SSDs on a chip that you need a slot on your motherboard to support. So although you could get an expansion card to run it, but again, now you're buying more stuff. So I really encourage folks to check out our article on what graphics cards are compatible with my PC to learn more about this. But my advice is, if you're looking to do an upgrade, make sure that what you're getting not only is capable of working with your computer, but is capable of giving you the benefits that you spent the money for with your computer. If you buy a card that can support 4K gaming and costs you $700, but you're putting it into a 5-year-old computer with a 5-year-old processor, well, you're probably not going to be able to play 4K games on it because the processor and maybe the RAM aren't going to be fast enough to keep up with that graphics card.
And all of that makes total sense, and in fact applies even here in our studio. We've talked over the last, 6 months or so that we've been looking to upgrade the broadcast computer in here, and we haven't done it in piecemeal because upgrading one bit isn't going to give us enough benefit to justify the cost, and whatever we did upgrade probably wouldn't transfer to a full system upgrade anyway, so it would be a money thrown at nothing, for a temporary upgrade, and that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, people love to upgrade. They love to rebuild their computers. I used to rebuild my desktop like every 3 years, and but the one piece that was always the same is the least expensive piece, which is the case. Well, I wouldn't say it's the least expensive, but depending on which one you got, but you can get a decent case for $50 to $100, right? A great case for $150. So that's the only piece that can realistically stay with you over generations. If you're upgrading your CPU every year or something, then maybe you can pop it into the same motherboard that you had. But for most people who can't afford to be doing upgrades every year, if you're doing upgrades every 3 to 5 years, you're probably going to find that the other components that you have also need to be upgraded. And what you thought was an upgrade is really a new computer. Now, in the case of laptops, I'll just say this real quick. Obviously, there's only 2 kinds of upgrades you can do to a laptop, if at all. And those are upgrading the storage and upgrading the RAM. And in those cases, I mean, well, the only other alternative is to buy a new computer. So, those can be quite beneficial if you're using a laptop and it doesn't have enough storage. SSDs are much cheaper now than they were a couple of years ago. If you're using one that doesn't have enough RAM and the RAM is upgradable, it might be worth your money to go up as high as you can to 12 or 16 gigabytes of RAM, whatever you can support. But you got to be cognizant of, is this really going to solve the problem that I'm trying to solve? Is the problem that I want to play high-end games? I might need a new computer.
Absolutely. And you said that you've got an article about this?
Yes. So come to the tomshardware.com homepage, and you can see under the graphics section what graphics cards are compatible with my PC.
Well, fantastic. Just for fun, I'm going to go look and compare a couple of the systems that I've got around just to see what graphics cards are compatible, because it's going to either make me sad or make me laugh with how old some of my machines are.
The answer is most of them will work, but you won't necessarily get the performance that you're looking for.
Sure. Well, as always, Avram, I appreciate you bringing this to us, because you keep on top of stuff that I simply don't have the bandwidth to do. So, as always, thank you. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. All the accessories you need to up your game on both PC and console are available from Razer. Whether you're looking for a new keyboard and a mouse, a webcam with chroma key built in, or RGB everything. You can find all of that from Razer, and you can find all the deals that are going on, and their outlet store, which right now has some really great deals in it, by going to f5live.tv/Razer. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that GeForce Now had finally come out of its very, very long beta, and it was exciting. It was the thing that we had all kind of wanted Stadia to be, and it was not. The ability to play games that you already owned on Battle.net and Uplay and Steam and Epic Games Store, all through a cloud streaming platform. So if maybe you're in that transitional period between whether or not a video card will help make your computer better for gaming, you could stream it from the GeForce Now service. And since we talked about it, some things have changed. In fact, within a matter of hours of the service coming out of beta, Activision had announced that they were discontinuing the Battle.net integration and that all Activision games would be coming off the platform. That was about a week and a half ago. And then this week, to add insult to injury, Bethesda said that they would remove all but one of their games, which is a little strange that they left Wolfenstein Youngblood, but everything else went away. They were removing everything from the platform. Obviously, Nvidia was in a little bit of damage control mode. They announced, one, that subscribers had broken 1 million, which is a pretty cool statistic to hit just 2 weeks into the thing, especially with Activision pulling out almost immediately. And they also made sure to let people know that Cyberpunk 2077, which is a game that is highly anticipated and also highly anticipated to be a resource hog, would be available day one on the platform, guaranteed, showing both that they were still working with new games and that there were still publishers that were excited about the platform and wanted to work with them, which obviously is an important thing as you watch two major publishers pull out. It's disappointing. It certainly starts to lend some credence to the business model that is the Xbox console streaming, which I mentioned at the top of the show that I've been testing out and is pretty cool. But it's so sad, especially after all the work that went into this, to have everybody pull out so quickly.
Yeah, it is. And here's the other thing. I don't really, and I been in communication with Nvidia about this. We've taken briefings from Nvidia. We've talked to them a bunch, but they never really explained exactly what they are doing with each game to make it run on the platform. They make it sound like they're not really doing anything or much at all, and to me that leaves me the question: is this another Aereo? They are sort of getting cooperation, unlike Aereo. Take a step back for our audience who doesn't remember Aereo. Aereo was a service that allowed you to watch broadcast television on your computer, because what they were doing was leasing you an antenna in real time. You
and tuner.
You logged into Aereo, right, exactly. So they were allowing you to do what you could have done if you had a TV and were in the place that they were. Mm-hmm. If you could have physically gone into their office and they had a couch for you, you could have sat there and watched and watched TV using over the air like anybody could.
Right.
But they got into trouble because the broadcast network sued them and said you have to pay licensing. You have to pay licensing for this because you're broadcasting it.
For
and Aereo's argument,
redistribution.
Right. And Aereo's argument, which I still buy, is we're just providing, we're just allowing people to do what people could have done themselves. We're just doing for them.
Essentially, they said we're a Slingbox farm, which is really what they were. So, they were a Slingbox farm.
So I question whether it's a similar situation to GeForce Now. Like, what GeForce Now is doing, in effect, is they're leasing you time on a computer that's much better than yours, and then you're streaming from it. So I don't understand what right. Well, obviously this didn't work out for Aereo, but that was broadcast television. Mm-hmm. What right these companies have to actually pull their stuff, because like you're like, if I had a pair of robot hands that I could control that were sitting in the server farm and could play it, like, would that be okay? Because all I'm doing is remote accessing games that I bought and paid for. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's really crappy of the game publishers to demand that their stuff be pulled. On the other hand, Nvidia was always doing this with their cooperation. They weren't doing an Aereo in the sense that they were trying to, to do it without cooperation from these companies.
Right.
And I know that they said that they've done things to make certain titles, quote unquote, optimized for it. But they also had an interesting situation where they had, I think we talked about this the last time, two different ways to run your app, right? There was one that was, they had like a few hundred games that are pre-installed, so that if you want to play that game, you don't have to wait for it to download after you've logged in. But then they have 1,000 other titles, or they had 1,000 other titles, where you could go in and this seems like a real pain in the butt, but it would download it and install it for you mm-hmm. while you wait. And then next time you came back, you'd have to do it again. So not exactly what you'd want to do, but in effect, it's like doing a remote desktop mm-hmm. on somebody else's more powerful computer. So I don't get how they, I think it's really unfair. I get how they can do it, but I think it's really kind of unfair that they're trying to accomplish, that they're doing this to, and what are they hoping to do? To get people to buy the game again, to do it, use it on streaming? This is actually a good thing for these companies, because I don't know how many people are actually going to buy a game just to use it on streaming, but there's that possibility. If I bought a couple games just to use on it, that people buy these games that they wouldn't have otherwise bought because they can play them now.
Yeah. Obviously, Stadia is basing its whole business model on the idea that people will either only buy it for cloud gaming, or will buy it again for cloud gaming. And it hasn't worked out great for them. It's the biggest complaint and the biggest reason why people aren't using it. And so, if the game publishers think that that's the business model that's going to be the winner for them, they're going to get Netflixed. You know what I mean? It's Blockbuster said people are going to keep renting DVDs. Netflix said you're stupid. And if the publishers think that that's going to be the winning strategy, I think they're just going to get smacked around by the publishers who understand that the winds are changing, that they need to be prepared for this kind of thing. Interestingly, there's another service whose name I can't remember. I was just trying to look it up, and I have no idea how I would look it up in my email at this point. They pitched us like a year and a half or more ago. Oh my God, it was when the Switch first came out. So that ages the pitch a little bit. And they were doing something similar where basically you just played through a remote desktop, through an RDP. And I don't think anybody's given them any kind of crap, but maybe it's because you can be Aereo for as long as you want until they find out, maybe. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, maybe it's the thing. Maybe the thing is that Nvidia is doing some level of optimization here. There was a previous service, was it OnLive? I forget, that we tested that was literally nothing but a remote desktop. Like you go in and you had a start menu, and it was Windows. Whereas GeForce Now, you're clearly on a PC, but they do something to kind of hide the PC from you. So there's like Nvidia, there's special wallpaper on it. There's no taskbar. There's no no settings menu that I can see. But so somewhere there's Windows, but it's hidden from you. Maybe if it were really just a pure PC rental, like, hey, you install your own game and good luck to you. We'll just make sure that you can use this remotely at high speeds. I don't know. Maybe that would be more bulletproof. Granted, I'm making a case that Nvidia is not making. I should be clear. Like, Nvidia is not saying these companies have no right to pull out. Nvidia has good relationships with these companies, with the game publishers. They have to. Vice versa, the publishers also have to have a good relationship with Nvidia, because they have to make sure that their games are optimized for Nvidia's technology. So, Nvidia is not going to kind of go out on a limb here and try and do something that the publishers don't want. And this may also be proof that Nvidia is maybe not the right company to run this kind of service. They obviously know video cards very well and they know games very well, but maybe they don't know the business wheelings and dealings that Apple and Amazon and Netflix do to get exclusives of content. Also, these companies may be thinking about exclusivity. I think Stadia has some exclusivity deals with some publishers. It may be the case that, hey, we don't want to just let you advertise that our game runs on your service, because then we can't charge some other company money to make sure that it's an exclusive on their platform. So it's unfortunate. I think we'll probably see a bunch of exclusivity deals, but to really succeed in this new world of game streaming, someone is going to have to bring the game's like ownership or rental, whatever you want to call it, of the game content together with the platform. Whereas GeForce Now is saying, like, bring the games you already have, or go to Steam or go to Epic Game Store on your own, buy a thing on your own, and then come back to us. So that's an investment. I think someone's got to bring both of those together, like a Netflix style, like, here are all the games you can stream. You've paid this amount of money, now you can stream all of our games.
And I think based on the interface right this second for Project xCloud from Microsoft, I have a feeling that that's going to be part of, and I have nothing to base this on except the UI. I have a feeling that that's going to be part of the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. And that there's probably going to be a third tier. Like, there's going to be Game Pass PC, Game Pass xCloud, and then Ultimate. So I have a feeling that that's how whatever xCloud ends up being called, whatever it is, I have a feeling that's going to be the business model there, is that it's going to be the Netflix of cloud gaming, which is, I hate getting pitches like that, but in this particular case, I think it works. I have a feeling that that's how that's going to work. And then from the other side, because there's the two services that are launching together, right? The other thing is the the cloud streaming, the console streaming, where I was sitting over at Amrock in Tampa, and through my Android phone, I was looking at my TV on my Xbox One. Like it was doing an RDP screen mirror, just like the Windows 10 app for Xbox can do in-house. I was doing it off network. So, and that's all within their closed ecosystem. You know what I mean? So that the fact that Microsoft already has the ecosystem, already has the hardware, and already has Azure, like they've already got everything they need, they might be the ones that can finally put this together, especially if my suspicions about the business model behind xCloud are right, which I think they are. Just a guess, because most of the games that are on there right now are Xbox Game Pass titles right now. So I have a feeling that's how it works, or going to work. So that pitch may be the thing. Microsoft might actually be working to bring your idea, the everybody working together in a working ecosystem, to market. So we will see. Obviously, that's just a lot of conjecture, but fingers crossed. Real quick, Liquid Sky was the company I was trying to think of. It does not appear to be a thing anymore, because when you go to their domain, it asks you for a username and password, and there's no way that's a good sign. So, anyway, so that was the remote desktop thing. So maybe the Aereo bug finally caught up with them too. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by RiffTrax. Make fun of movies or let these guys do it for you. Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy, the former stars of Mystery Science Theater 3000, are back and doing what they do best, creating commentaries for Hollywood blockbusters and B-movie oddities like Hijacked Flight 285, which appears to have been filmed in a movie theater and not an airplane. Terrible. The way it works is for a couple of bucks, you download the MP3, play it along with your Amazon Prime, Netflix, DVD, Hulu, wherever the movie happens to exist, and laugh. From time to time they do live events. Their Live 2020 is on Kickstarter right now, and we will find out how that goes. I believe they've already hit their goal, which is fantastic. They plan on doing Hobgoblins on June 11th and Amityville, The Evil Escapes in October. And that'll be fun. You can also see the old ones and a bunch of short films, all by going to f5live.tv/rifftracks with an X. Oh my goodness. The live events are so much fun. Anyway, so it's a little annoying that we keep having to have this conversation, but here we are. You would think of all of the companies in the tech space that today Google would understand the problems with ignoring the laws surrounding COPPA better than anybody else. They were recently smacked around by the FTC, and YouTube had to kind of change a lot of their community guidelines and even the upload process for uploading a new video to YouTube because of their fine and agreement with the FTC over the inappropriate collecting of data about children on their platform. In YouTube's case, they said, we don't really have a lot of control over whether or not kids watch videos outside of the YouTube Kids app, but they still lost. This week, a lawsuit has been filed by the state of New Mexico against Google, claiming that Google Education and the tools around it knowingly and purposefully collect information about school children and use it to create data profiles on the kids, which is expressly prohibited by both COPA and New Mexico's Unfair Practices Act. Google claims that everything New Mexico says is factually wrong, and that Google Education gives educators the ability to choose what data is collected, and that parental consent is part of the platform. New Mexico absolutely disagrees. And Google says we don't use personal information from users in primary and secondary schools to target ads. Again, New Mexico disagrees. And it once again brings us back to a similar, but this time kind of different issue, right? Because the Google Education suite of tools is specifically targeted at children. It's not like YouTube where they're like, well, you have to be 13 to use the app. And the FTC went, yeah, and that's not the way it works. We all know that's not the way it works. In this case, everybody knows that's not the way it works. Everybody knows that this is for kids. It's what it's designed for.
Yeah, well, I'd like to know what the data is that they're storing in the app, in the data profile. I mean, is it anonymized? Is it, is it tied to that child? I mean, Google says that New Mexico has it wrong, so let's see what one of those profiles looks like.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to do, right? Release here is what a Google Education profile, data profile looks like, based on the settings of the school or the school district. But I don't think COPA allows for the idea of somebody saying this is what you're allowed to, like a school district or somebody. The only time it's bypassable is if there's parental or guardian approval. And from some of the apps that some of the apps you've tested, that sometimes that parental or guardian approval process is so complicated that you've even said that you've put in a different date just to be able to move forward.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all the time. It's too much of a pain in the butt. Unfortunately, like, I'm sure someday I'll hear from other parents who are like, yeah, we do all that. And, I mean, our process with my son who's 7 is like, oh, you want to download that app? Okay, let me see what it is. All right, it looks legit. You can download it.
Which in that case is at least as much as parental consent would be anyway, and possibly more, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then when you have to register for that app, though, then we have to it just, you have to certify that you're over 13 for something. So I'll be the one to register it.
Yep.
Right? Like there was some game he downloaded yesterday where I had to sign in. But one thing that I find interesting about this question with the Google is, if this were a closed network service, would it be subject to the same issues? Like, if the school, these tools are being used by the school. At my son's school, they don't do anything with Chromebooks, or at least not in his grade yet. So I really don't know how schools handle this, how they work with Google apps. Obviously, they have it. Kids have Chromebooks. They're using Google Docs. But I guess what I don't know is, if schools obviously have a greater right to student data than an internet company does.
Sure.
Right? Like, my school knows a lot of stuff about my son. They know a lot of stuff about our family. to be fair, they kind of have to know a lot of this stuff. I mean, you can't really, he's going to school there every day. So,
right.
So if the school were the proprietors of the data, and it wasn't in a cloud service such as Google, would we be talking about the same thing? Because I don't think COPA applies to local networks.
I don't think so either.
So are we really just not in touch? Is the law really just not in touch with the idea of cloud computing? Because here, what we're doing is the school is supposedly, now this is where I'd like to see some examples of what control the school has over the data, what the data looks like, what exactly they're collecting, is it anonymized, like what is it for? Like, otherwise it's kind of nebulous, but the school has a definite interest in, I don't know, being able to read the students' work, being able to provide tech support for them,
sure,
knowing if you did your homework, like, I don't know, all that stuff. So, like, obviously, the school needs to have administrative rights to these accounts. They're going to use a cloud service, which in these cases is Google. Why? That's only bad to me if Google is taking this data and using it for something else. Google
right.
is itself mining the data, using it for Google purposes, and those Google purposes are not in the interest of the students.
Essentially,
which obviously is a very vague thing to say.
Essentially, if the data profile is a Google data profile as opposed to a Google education data profile, if it's used just within the context of the tools, so that teachers can interact with students and things like that, versus the ads that get shown on YouTube, right? Because that's a pretty big jump from a teacher being able to see your progress through your work to targeted ads on YouTube. Because what about Blackboard, right? Blackboard's used in a lot of schools, including non-colleges and universities. Granted, it's mostly used in colleges and universities, but I've heard of it being used in middle and high school, and they certainly collect information. They've got student profiles. They would have to, because a teacher has to. They can't just base it off of random characters. They've got to know the student's name, right? So maybe the thing that New Mexico is actually claiming is that it's a shared data profile, and Google's basically saying, no, that's not the case. Because I've never heard anybody make the same claim about Blackboard.
Right. So I guess we'll have to see what comes out in this case, but I'm not immediately going to blame take the school the state side
Sure.
here, because we haven't seen what data is actually being collected.
Absolutely. So my guess is that this is not going to be something that will be settled outside of court. We will almost certainly see this thing progress, as the FTC one did. Google tried to settle that one, and it didn't work out. So my guess is this will go the same way, and we'll learn more about what this looks like probably in the coming months. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. In addition to your free shipping, you also get some cool other features like Amazon Prime Music, which gives you several million tracks available to stream for free, Amazon Prime Video, which gives you TV, movies, documentaries, both original and licensed content, even some HBO back catalog stuff available as part of your subscription. And my favorite, Twitch Prime, which gives you one free subscription per month, which you can use to help support the content creator of your choice. You can subscribe to PLUGHITZ Live or anybody else and help them out financially. And you get free games. How can you pass up free games? And we have links to all of these features. And if you're not already a Prime subscriber, we've also got a link for a 30-day free trial, all of which are available by going to f5live.tv/prime. We've been talking about it for at least a year, the inevitability of some video streaming service consolidation, and we might be seeing the beginnings of it now, as new services seem to be constantly popping up. And we just talked a couple of weeks ago about Warner Media has like 800 services, and they're going to add one more on top of it. Here we have a couple of services that are possibly under contract for purchase. Vudu, who has had several owners over the years and several intentions. They started as a place to turn DVDs into digital downloads and have done all kinds of weird things since then, including offering a family time censorship thing like what VidAngel tried. All of that since Walmart took over. That service is reported to be in late contracts or discussions with NBC Universal, which I think makes sense. NBC Universal is getting ready to launch their Peacock streaming service, and it would make sense for NBC Universal to be looking to kind of build their catalog up a little bit, especially as some of the content producers versus the networks have started to exert power over their rights. Friends, for example, Warner exerted their rights over, and so Friends is moving to HBO, which is strange. So NBC is starting to look for ways to boost their catalog. Vudu might be the way to do that. On the other hand, Fox recently sold much of their content catalog off to Disney, and they are looking at purchasing a service called Tubi, which is a free ad-supported service similar to Pluto TV. It's got TV and movies and stuff like that, but it's all ad-supported. And Fox is looking to bring that into their fold. So for as much as $500 million, which I don't know, sounds a little crazy, but
I love Tubi.
Do you?
Yeah. Finish what you were saying. I'll tell you how Tubi is great.
Okay. So Fox has expressed interest in the idea of some ad-supported content. So I think this purchase makes sense, although the price might be a little strange. Tell me about Tubi, Avram.
Well, I really hope I also like Vudu. I'm probably one of the only people who's used both of these services and really likes them. Vudu, is a decent place to buy or rent movies that can be cheaper and sometimes can be cheaper than Prime sometimes. And I have had some things where, we've gotten some codes at the office for a couple of movies. I think, I don't know, I'll be honest, someone else in some other part of the company has occasionally gotten some like promo codes for some movies and like giving them out to a couple of people, and to quote unquote own the movie, you had to like type it in, and it would give you a choice of owning it on one other service or Vudu, and I'd always choose Vudu. And it's decent. You can get apps for it, streaming apps for it for like your Xbox or whatever, and they're
part of the movies.
Stuff.
They're part of the Movies Anywhere initiative too. So if you connect it to your Movies Anywhere, you can stream it on any of the other platforms that are part of the Movies Anywhere platform, which is
I think I've used it for that also.
yeah, which is a cool capability.
I think I've used it for that with that also, where I've gotten a Blu-ray and then put it onto there. So I think it's a decent, although way under publicized service.
Mm-hmm.
Tubi has a lot of great stuff on it for free, because it has a lot of, like, yes, it has some stuff from the early 2000s also, but what I love about Tubi is they have a ton of old sci-fi movies and shows that you won't find everywhere else. You won't find them on Prime. You won't necessarily find them on Prime or Netflix. So, for example, lately I got really into, don't judge, I got really into watching Space 1999, which is a show from the 70s that was like Star Trek of the 70s. And you could not, before, like, recently, you couldn't stream that show and you had to buy some old DVDs or something. Now you can watch all 48 episodes of the show for free on Tubi. Prime has the second season, but not the first. So anyone can go and watch Space 1999 on Tubi. But that's not all. Tubi has a whole bunch of Riff Tracks movies. They have stuff from like the early 2000s, like Minority Support, and even things that are not that super old. They've got a lot of content on Tubi that's free and that you won't necessarily find everywhere else online.
Yeah.
So I actually think if you haven't used Tubi, it's definitely worth checking out. Yeah, you've got some commercial breaks built in, but it's not ridiculously so.
Right.
I watched it. I've used it on Xbox, so it's available on a variety of platforms. It's available on Android also, so you don't have to. You don't have to just watch it in your browser or on your phone. You can watch it on your TV. I mean, there's just a lot of. There's Plan 9 from Outer Space on there, and for folks who don't like old, quote unquote, old movies like that, I mean, they have much newer fare on there, like Ninja Turtles movie from 2014, and the Scooby-Doo live action movies, Saw the final chapter. I don't know if they have all the chapters, but
I'll tell you the thing.
They have the whole TV show.
We talked about this platform a while back, and I went and explored it. And when I discovered that the Riff Tracks Live Birdemic Shock and Terror was on there, which I have seen dozens of times because it's one of my favorite things in the world. But I saw it on here and I'm like, all right, I've seen it a lot of times. Let me see what my experience here is, because I know what my normal experience was. And like you said, the ads aren't, they don't interrupt it as badly as they would on, say, the NBC app, and I never felt like I was taken out of the experience, which is good, and I really enjoyed it, and I've spent a lot more time on it since then. But that was my introduction. When I found Birdemic on there, I'm like, all right, I'm in. Let's try this thing.
Now, I have to say, I was actually watching Tubi yesterday, and on my phone, and for like, I could swear there was a period of time when I got no ads at all for a while. So I'm surprised that they're being valued so highly, because it doesn't look to me like they are like killing you with ads, or that their ads are particularly targeted. For example, you don't even have to register you don't even have to sign up for an account to use it. I have a strong feeling that, like, once they get sold, it's not going to be as user friendly as it is now, because I'm sure that they're not monetizing the monetizing this like they could.
Sure, that could be.
You know, they really.
But maybe.
So enjoy it now.
Indeed, and watch Birdemic on it for free, because it's the funniest thing you'll ever watch. I don't know if the other one's on here, but that's my all-time favorite. Monos, The Hands of Fate is my second. Anyway, so it's not surprising that these things are starting to go this way. I think we've talked about the fact that some of the smaller ones would be the first ones to be incorporated elsewhere. Fox kind of has nothing going on, so getting into something free and clear, especially something that resembles the original Hulu so closely in intention and in implementation, even in UI. It resembles the early Hulu stuff a lot, and Fox was one of the creators of Hulu, so that kind of makes sense that that's where they would get started back. And as far as Vudu is concerned, the ability to have some of the licensing for Peacock makes sense, and then the ability maybe for Peacock to not only have a free and 2 paid tiers, but also the ability to rent, one-offs, rent or buy one-offs like Vudu, all within one ecosystem kind of makes sense. So, plus, Walmart being in the video streaming business was always a strange thing. So
yes.
When you could bring a DVD, this was when they first bought it, you could bring a DVD into a Walmart, hand it to one of the people in the electronics section, and then they give you a code and you can go home, and now you had it on Vudu. It's like, why did I give you the DVD? That's so weird. But whatever. It was like the anti-Blockbuster. Instead of renting the DVD, you gave it to them. Anyway, it was all very strange. And so Walmart's interaction was always a bizarre aspect of Vudu, maybe under the Comcast ecosystem, and then with Peacock coming up, Peacock might actually become the most interesting platform there is. Who knows? But all of these are still kind of rumor, late talks, but rumor. So they could all fall apart. Who knows? But I don't think they will. Well, that is our show. Thank you to those of you who joined us live. We always appreciate it. If you weren't able to and would like to in the future, Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can go to f5live.tv/join us and chat with us in the studio, talk about the topics while we're talking about them. We always love that. And if you'd like to see and or hear this show and others, you can always go to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe and see all of our shows, including PLUGHITZ Live Presents, which is publishing a ton of CES content right now. So you'll definitely want to check that out. And wherever it is that you're listening or watching us, we always appreciate it. And definitely follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and interact with us over there. And with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we will see you guys back next time. Ciao.